Now, Mr. Speaker, we need to get on to some other issues. And I want to explain to the Majority Leader why I didn't vote for the bill. The President of the United States did something I think was bad judgment and put millions of people at risk. It's called Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. 86% of the American people think that we ought to protect those children who came here, not of their own volition, but as children. The Majority Leader, myself, the Minority Leader, and the Speaker of the House met with leaders of the Hispanic community, leaders of the African American community, and leaders of the Asian Pacific Island community. When I say leaders, the three chairs of those caucuses. And we talked in late September, about a week and a half after the President had withdrawn DACA protections, and said, we need to solve this. Now, Mr. Speaker, let me quote the Speaker of the House, Mr. Ryan. My commitment to working together on an immigration measure that we can make law is a sincere commitment. Let me repeat. My commitment to working together on an immigration measure that we can make law is a sincere commitment. We will solve this DACA problem, said the Speaker. Once we get this budget agreement done, this was not the omnibus, this was the precursor to the omnibus, which set the level of spending. He said, we will solve this DACA problem. And we will get this done no matter how long it takes us to stay here. We will focus on bringing the debate to this floor and finding a solution. I voted no on the omnibus because they did not follow through on that commitment. So everybody understands. However, I'm the whip. I count votes. And I certainly think the Majority Leader has had enough evidence and has enough respect for my ability that if we had worked to defeat that bill, we would have defeated it with the 90 Republicans who voted no on the bill the Republicans brought to the floor, which wasn't agreed. But that bill needed to pass. But yes, I voted no, because from September, and the Speaker told me, oh, March 5th is coming, we got time to fix it. We got time to take care of these 700, 800,000 young people that 86% of the American people thinks ought not to be sent to a country that is not their home, they don't know, and they've not been there for the overwhelming majority of their lives. So yes, I voted no, because on their behalf, I was concerned that that commitment that the Speaker enunciated in February, approximately a month before DACA was to terminate, had not been met. It is now a month after March 5th, Mr. Speaker, and that commitment has not been met to this day. Notwithstanding the fact that Speaker Ryan urged the President not to do what he did. And the President turned around and said, fix it by legislation. And the Speaker committed in that meeting to which I referred just weeks after the President acted as saying, we'll get that done. Now, Mr. Speaker, there is a rule that has been filed by a Republican member of this House. It now has, I think, 44 Republicans on it. If it doesn't have yet, it'll have 190 plus Democrats on it, which will mean that 230 members of this House will have signed on to a document that says, let's fix DACA now. Yes, I voted no. I voted no in protest and in dismay that we had not addressed this issue. I hope I've explained to the Majority Leader why I voted no. But at the same time, why a majority of my party, including the leader of my party, Ms. Pelosi, voted aye. They voted aye because they knew we had made an agreement. They knew it was an agreement reached by both sides. They didn't like everything in it any more than Republicans liked everything in it. But it was an agreement. And so it passed handily. And I will tell my friend, I hope he does not doubt, perhaps he does, that that would have happened without a perception and belief on this side that we had an agreement and it ought to pass. And it did pass, with 90 Republicans voting no, and the overwhelming majority of my party voting yes. I hope the leader will tell me, Mr. Speaker, whether or not the commitment that was made in September, the commitment that was articulated by the Speaker of the House in February when he was urging us and his own members to support the legislation which sets the level of spending on which the omnibus was based. I hope he can assure me that before the end of this month, that we will have the opportunity to do what we think is extraordinarily fair to do. Mr. Goodlatte of the Judiciary has a bill. I don't like the bill, but it is a bill that came out of the Majority Committee. There's another bill called the Dreamer Bill that is a bipartisan bill sponsored by Ileana Ross-Layton, a Republican from Florida, and Lucille Roybal Allard, a Democrat from California. Bring that bill to the floor. And then there is a third bill, Mr. Speaker, sponsored by Mr. Hurd from Texas, a Republican, and Mr. Aguilar, a Democrat from California, that I believe has the support of over 218 members of this House. And I've asked the Majority Leader, we've asked the Speaker, bring those three bills to the floor. Bring those three bills to the floor and let the House work its will. The Speaker's leaving, but the Speaker has on numerous occasions said, we will not duck the tough issues. That's a direct quote, Mr. Speaker. We will take them head on. We should not hide our disagreements. We should embrace them. We have nothing to fear from honest disagreements, honestly stated. Bring those three bills to the floor. Mr. Speaker, I implore the Majority Leader, let the House work its will. Face the tough issues. I yield to my friend.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Speaker, I listened intently to my friend to give his explanation of why he voted no on the Omni that people negotiated for. And I don't doubt that that's the reason why. He said he was concerned about DACA. The only thing, Mr. Speaker, I'm concerned about, that was the same excuse he gave me of why he voted to shut the government down when he said he would never do that either. But, Mr. Speaker, when I read his Twitter account...
Mr. Speaker, I'm reclaiming my time. Will the Majority Leader tell me when I voted to shut down the government? Does he have a site there? I yield to my friend.
Yield back to you. Once I finish this, I'll give you the date. Will you find the exact one? Reading is Tuesday? Yes. Tuesday on your Twitter account. I like how you use it more often. Maybe the President inspired you. At Whip Hoyer, dreamers can still apply to renew DACA protections. Learn more about the requirements for applying for renewal. I don't know which one's right. If on his Twitter account he says it's okay because no DACA students or kids are being removed, he says in his Twitter account you can apply right now. But I'm going to vote against the Omni that we negotiated with because I'm really worried about the rescissions that goes against maybe some money that's been wasted. But when I look at this, Mr. Speaker, I know for a fact the President made another offer to not only solve DACA, but to solve Dreamers. All he requested was, could we have the border secure? He wasn't asking for an astronomical number, because when you think back, many times, Mr. Speaker, I get an argument from the other side about the Gang of Eight bill. They spent twice as much on border security than the President's asking for. I know for a fact the President talked to the leader on the other side of his party. I know for a fact they came back and said no. I know for the President, he actually put it out on his Twitter account. The President wants to solve this problem, but he wants to make sure the border is secure. Mr. Speaker, as we speak right now, there are people who are marching from other countries because they think they could just march directly across our border. I think our border needs to be secure. I would hope everybody would feel that same way. I know the President wants to solve this problem. He offered it. As a fact, Mr. Speaker, the President said it from in these chambers for the whole nation to hear. Sometimes I begin to wonder, do words and action actually do the exact same thing? Could it be possible, Mr. Speaker, that sometimes people play politics with issues? Could it be possible that sometimes people could use that for an excuse? Could it be possible that people would say they want to solve a problem, but when they have the offer of a solution, they say no so they could keep it to try to make a political argument out of it? I don't know. Maybe. But I will tell the American public this. We want to solve that problem. Now, Mr. Speaker, my friend on the other side of the aisle, he's worried about the debt. I am too. Now, he voted for a budget that would increase it by more than $6 trillion, but he wants to raise your taxes and take more of your money by another $3 trillion. It still increases it much more than what he takes in taxes. He said he heard those arguments all before, that the Republicans, they won't do well if they let people keep more of their own money. Well, I just looked at the latest numbers in the first 3 months with the new tax bill. You know what? More revenue came in. Millions of people got to keep more of what they earned. What's interesting is so many Americans got a pay raise simply because government said you could do better with your own. And that, I think, is true. And if my friend, Mr. Speaker, agrees with that, I know he'll be there for the rescission. Where can we stand up for the taxpayer? If there is money wasted here, why wouldn't we go line by line? And it won't be just the Omni. It'll be all those other accounts that have been sitting there. I don't think that's a Republican or Democrat idea. I truly believe that's an American idea. And I think that's the responsibility that we all have. I know these colloquies go long. I like my friend across the aisle, Mr. Speaker. I consider him a friend. But just as anybody has friends, we have different philosophical opinions. And that's healthy. But at the end of the day, we can't make excuses. At the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, there's a bill on the floor, and yeah, I want it 100% my way, but unfortunately, that's not the way our government's created. It's supposed to find compromise. I can always find an excuse. You know what? Someone didn't look right at me, or someone said something I disagreed with. But as we know today, no DACA child is getting deported. As we know today, the President wants to solve this. As we know today, the President has made many offers. So, I think, Mr. Speaker, there's no more time for excuses. It's time for solving.
Mr. Speaker, the Majority Leader and I serve in a co-equal branch of government. We don't serve at the pleasure of the President, nor should we go hat in hand to the President of the United States and say, can we do this? The Majority Leader, of course, did not answer my question. He wants to continue to talk about who voted for or against the omnibus, as opposed to responding, are we going to have a balanced budget on the floor? We can have amendments on the floor. That sounds good. We can articulate that we're going to grow ourselves out. But doing it, just do it. Yes, temporarily, the courts have said the president didn't do the right thing in the right way. So there has been a stay. And the gentleman is correct that the DACA students are not at risk as of March 5th. I say students. Some of them are students, some are not. Words do, in fact, mean something. And the leader says that all he wants is border security. Well, border security, and he wants to restrict the ability to unify moms and dads and their children in the United States of America.
Well, the gentleman yielded because he knows that's not true. You just said, I want to stop unification and moms and dads. You know that's not true, and you know I made an offer to actually speed that up. I yield back.
I'm reclaiming my time. Is the gentleman saying that when we had discussions in your office and you wanted to eliminate the option to sponsor mothers and fathers by their children, was that not part of the offer that you discussed in your office, Mr. Leader? And I yield to you.
Yes, I'm saying that's not true, so let me explain what it is. So,
I'd be glad to hear the explanation.
So when someone comes here, they can petition others. They can petition their parents, they can petition their children, they can petition their spouse, they can petition their brother and sister, and then they can petition their married children.
Currently.
Right as today, currently, you're only allowing 65,000 for brothers and sisters. That's not a mother, and that's not a child. Right now, today, there's more than a 30-year wait. So what we proposed is that system's not working. So a brother and sister has their own family. So instead of taking those up, why don't you put those in to the spouse and the children? So what we offered to you, and maybe they didn't quite understand it, you would speed up the process for parents, your spouses, and your children. I always thought that was very reasonable.
We could go around, reclaiming my time, we go round and round on that. Obviously, when we talked about family reunification, you had an offer that you said you were making on behalf of the president that clearly undermined the ability to sponsor by some their mothers and fathers. We can go round and round on that. That was my perception of it. We'll get the record, and I think that's pretty accurate. Mr. Leader, Mr. Speaker, the answer to the question, though, has not come. And that is, will the Majority Leader bring to the floor 3 bills and let them be voted on by this House and express the will of the American people? One of those bills is a Republican bill. One is probably perceived by the Republicans as a Democratic bill, although Ileana Ross-Layton is a co-sponsor of that bill. And one clearly is a bipartisan bill negotiated by Mr. Hurd, Republican from Texas, and Mr. Aguilar, a Democrat from California, that has at least 44 Republicans who have signed on to a rule to bring that particular bill to the floor. All 193 Democrats will be for that bill to bring it to the floor, which is over 230 members of this House. I am asking the leader, will he bring those 3 bills to the floor? Because what the president said, and the leader says words matter, what the president said on TV for all of America to see, we will solve the DACA issue. You send me a bill, and I will sign it. That's what he said, Mr. Speaker. But what happened? The Senate had 4 bills. Unlike the House, Mr. McConnell brought those 4 bills to the floor so the Senate could work its will. And there were some 25 senators, Republicans and Democrats, come together and put a common sense bill on the floor. Contrary to what the President of the United States said in that meeting on television, not my words, just Go back to the video. Replay it. I will sign a bill, and then he said, beating it, he didn't beat his chest literally, I will take the heat. What did he do when the common sense bill came to the floor? He said, I will veto if it's sent down here. And it had $25 billion in authorization for the president's wall and border security. And he said, I'll veto it. And as a result, it only got 54 votes. It needed 60 votes. Had he not said he would veto it, it would have passed. I am absolutely convinced of that. That was 4 bills. Why, Mr. Speaker? This is the people's house. The Speaker said we'll take the tough issues head on. We will not shrink from that responsibility. All we are asking is to bring those bills to the floor. Rescissions, we can argue about the rescissions, and when they come down here substantively, the leader mentions frequently about money that's not going to be spent anyway. None of us are going to oppose that. If that's in fact what it does, that's an obfuscation of the issue that we're talking about. We had an agreement. We think that agreement upset a lot of the majority leader's party, and that's why this is happening. They're going to try to correct that political problem they have, just like the balanced budget amendment was trying to correct that political problem. So I would hope, Mr. Speaker, that the leader would assure me at some point in time that they will do what they said they will do from September to now, address solving the DACA issue. And then what the president said, Mr. Speaker, was then we'll go to comprehensive immigration reform. We ought to do that. The Senate passed a bill some 5 years ago. We asked and have asked over the last 5 years, bring that bill to the floor. Now that bill doesn't exist now, because in the Congress in which it was sent to us, it wasn't brought to the floor. The Republicans were in charge and they didn't bring it to the floor. We asked for it over and over and over again so we could solve what everybody knows is a broken immigration system. But at least in the ambit of these 3 bills, there is a solution to one small part of that the president on national TV said he wanted to solve and would sign the bill. Right up until the time he said he would veto the bill. The president is a very flexible individual, as we've all seen. I hope he would sign any one of these bills. And I think the Senate would pass the Aguilar Hurd bill. If it was brought to the floor, I'm convinced it would pass. I think it would pass the Senate, and I would hope the president would sign it and solve a problem that the President of the United States, when he rescinded the protections, asked us to legislate on and send him a bill. I would hope he would do that. I hope the Majority Leader would do that. The Majority Leader wants, I'll yield to my friend.
I think the gentleman feeling, Mr. Speaker, the gentleman asked me a question earlier. I want to make sure I answer it. I made a claim that the gentleman voted to shut the government down. My claim is based upon three times. January 22nd, continuing resolution to keep the government open, you voted no. On February 6th, the continuing resolution, you voted no. Then when government was shut down, there was a bill to reopen the government on February 9th, and you again voted no. I yield back.
Mr. Speaker, I'll look at those references. I did vote to shut down, certainly. I think I'm not sure of the January date when we had the majority. We won that vote. The Majority Leader came back to the floor within a few hours. We had a vote. We voted to open up the government. Almost every Democrat voted for that. Oh, yeah. Government open, and then we got a deal. So the issue that I asked the Majority Leader about, he still has not responded to.